Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, we are going to talk about how being liberal politically does not usually have or never has anything to do with sexuality, and why men in particular conflate this characteristic and how to get out of this way of thinking about it, which does not help because it just means that you feel like your wife pulled some sort of bait and switch when she really didn't. So before we get to that, please do subscribe. I have 76 subscriber episodes. Most recently is to divorce when you are not angry anymore at your partner. And if you don't understand why then you would divorce, well, then you should listen to the podcast. All right, so I work with a lot of men, obviously, and a lot of couples, and a lot of women. But more and more men reach out as my podcast and my blog and all that grows, and I've gotten more and more men that are from different places in the country, whereas, also there was the passage of PSI-PACT, which allows me to work with far more people in the country. That's a reciprocity agreement, but anyway, so I work with a lot more conservative men. And conservative men whose partners are not as conservative as them. And in this situation, frequently what happens is a guy grows up in a fairly conservative home, and then he goes to college, or beyond college, he meets a woman who is more liberal politically. And this is very fascinating because this woman is saying all sorts of things that intellectually he finds very interesting. And on a subconscious level, he conflates this with an open-mindedness that goes beyond politics. But she's not really doing that. She's not saying that. She's not trying to say that. But he doesn't know that. So what do I mean? Because this can seem very nebulous without an example. So let's say a woman says that she is against slut shaming, right? And that she feels that women should be able to do whatever they want with their bodies. Well, you could see how this would be an extremely different viewpoint to hear a woman say this for a man that grew up hearing his mother say kind of that sex is bad and to wait until marriage, and telling his sisters, let's say, to be good girls and wait until marriage. So this would seem like a very sexually open woman that really likes sex. And then he feels like, wow, like this is somebody who is very sexually open-minded. It doesn't mean that at all. It means that she's politically open-minded. It doesn't mean she wants to be your slut, as I say in my subtitle of this podcast. It means that she doesn't want somebody who chooses to be, quote, slutty, aka promiscuous or whatever, to be ashamed of it, which is valid, I agree. But that has nothing to do with that your specific wife wants to do any act with you. So she could say women can do whatever they want with their bodies. Well, that could seem, again, very exciting until that one actually backfires tremendously because she only does what she wants with her body. And so these are women who actually are the most recalcitrant around the idea of responsive desire, because they think, if I don't want it right now, why would I have sex? And so it goes against everything that they think to say, oh, well, maybe I'm never going to want it right now within monogamy, but to be a good partner, I want to get myself into a situation where my body can respond, because I shouldn't be listening to whether or not my body is aroused before contact, because no human female's monogamous body is aroused prior to contact. So as I discuss, obviously, all over, including most specifically in my Responsive Desire podcast. So, but if you have a viewpoint that it's like basically women should do whatever the hell they want all of the time, you could see how this may not concord with the idea of a reciprocal happy marriage. And I'm not saying that certainly it's bad to be politically liberal at all, or to be politically conservative. It's startling to me, and I've written about this, that there are therapists who, I had a podcast on this, who say things in the listservs like, I have to refer out this client because I don't believe I don't agree with their political beliefs. I mean, what the hell is our profession? I mean, would your doctor refuse to treat your cancer because like he didn't agree with your political beliefs? It's just crazy. And it's a profession that I thought was supposed to be predicated on extreme open-mindedness and empathy, to the point where you would try to understand how anybody could have any belief system, and then start work with them from where they're at, meeting them where they're at with empathy. But anyway, that's just an aside. But the point here is there's no political extreme position that really relates to a lot of empathy. And I've seen that on the liberal side and on the conservative side, both sides. Both sides can be extremely close-minded. Being an extremist of any sort is very obviously close-minded. It means that you often reject the other position completely out of hand, and that you associate more and more with people who only agree with you. So this isn't good. I talk about the manosphere a lot. It's not good in the manosphere, but it's not good in the very anti-male women's groups that are on the internet as well. In a lot of female groups, there emerges a very anti-male sentiment that is just as toxic as the anti-female sentiment that is in a lot of the male groups. So it's on either side. That extremism relates to closed-mindedness and a lack of empathy for your partner if they believe even slightly differently than you do. So when you are dating somebody or thinking about whether you're sexually compatible with them, their political beliefs should really have very little to do with it. And there is no intellectual proxy variable for sexuality, unless it's really just the construct of open-mindedness. So if you're open-minded, then if you're extremely committed to open-mindedness, at the very least, then you would imagine that that person would not shame their partner for having certain preferences or kinks or whatever. Although, it's interesting because I do see people who say that they're very open-minded, and then they are physiologically disgusted by a partner's preferences and kinks. So I think that this is more of a sense sort of thing. It's like more of located in the body, the sexuality. It's if you take the erotic blueprint quiz, they talk about the different sexual styles, and just Google erotic blueprint quiz. And it's like these emerge. I mean, I was going to say with the exception of the kink one, but there's plenty of super conservatives that are kinky, and they just don't tell anybody. But yeah, this is just different. It's just like a totally different, separate variable that doesn't have anything to do with your philosophical or political leanings. Whether you love touch and to be intimate doesn't have it's completely orthogonal with your political self and where you fall philosophically on the spectrum of whether people should or shouldn't do certain sexual acts. So a woman saying that sex work should be legalized, for example, a man who was raised with a mother who would never say such a thing might be very enthusiastically excited about committing their life to such an open-minded person. And instead, what this woman is saying is basically, I don't want anybody to suffer. I want this to be legalized so that prostitutes don't get hurt, so that there can be rules around it. But they are in no way thinking in any sort of prurient sense about what goes on between the prostitute and the John. I mean, in no way. Like, this isn't something that is like, she doesn't feel any affinity to the prostitute, I'm trying to say, except for the fact that they're both female and that she believes that people should have basic human rights and should be taken care of within a legal system. But when you say certain things to a man who has never heard anybody say anything like them, then the man often conflates this political liberalness and this open-mindedness about constructs like, for example, the sex work or the slut shaming, with like the fact that the woman feels like this sexual sort of that she feels empathy for these women because she too is like a highly sexual being. It has nothing to do with that. And I hear this so much that like a guy thought that a woman was very open-minded because politically she said things that he had never heard before, or philosophically. Do not conflate these things. You know, there are men who would be far more compatible with a woman who was politically conservative, even a liberal man, by the way, with a woman who's politically conservative, but who loves touch. Like, because that is a separate, completely separate construct. It's like as though, like, your husband, let's say, really believes in higher education and he believes in the value of education. And he says that a lot. Oh, yeah, I really believe in education, and I would want our children in the future to be able to go to college, and I really want I want to save up for college for my kids, and I feel like that's a very important thing. Like, this doesn't always mean that your husband then is some big intellectual, you know? I mean, just because he thinks he's saving up for your kid's college does not mean that he's like reading in bed at night. He may just be doing fantasy football. So you have to actually look at the person in front of you instead of making these generalizations based on their kind of philosophical opinions about the world. So this goes beyond this basically this sexuality thing to many other things. You want to be observing the person in real time. If you're talking to a woman who says that she feels that women should be able to have sex whenever they want, however they want, and that nobody should be judged for their sexual preferences, but she doesn't really seem to have any sexual preferences. When you have sex, it's basically penis and vagina sex all the time. She kind of never goes over to you for a kiss or a cuddle. What you're seeing is somebody whose philosophy you align with, but that person, who they are as a human being is not compatible. If you're a high libido sexual person, it's not compatible with you. Whereas somebody could have a very different political or no real political philosophy about any sort of sexual issue, but be somebody who in the erotic blueprint thing is a highly sensual person that likes touch and sex. So this is its own variable. And this obviously goes far beyond this point. I mean, there's plenty of people who, for example, like here's one that's interesting. So there's many people who have an OCPD partner, right? And I did a podcast about OCPD, obsessive compulsive personality disorder. These people are often really into, not often, one of the key criteria is that they are super obsessed with being right morally and ethically. And so this is another form of their rigidity. But if you're meeting them at first, you could just see them as a super ethical person and think that this is going to mean that they're really kind. They may not be kind at all. They may be extremely irritable and rigid by definition, but they have these really they're super into certain ethical perspectives. So like they might donate a lot of money because they don't want people to be hungry, and they don't in fact think it's fair that anybody in the world would be hungry, right? So that is admirable. But then yet if you're married to that person and your own child wants to play a game with them, they may not be nice at all because they are being interrupted in their task of perhaps even, donating money, to the hungry. Like ethics and philosophical positions on ethics have very, very little to do with how somebody is going to act day to day and the kind of physical and sensual experience that they have inside their body. So while I am a super big proponent of online dating, I feel like it opens up the whole world of potential partners to people, especially to single parents who don't have that much time to get out there and meet people in any sort of bar or party setting. And I met my own husband on OkCupid. I think that sometimes when people are using online dating, they are their list of requirements can be way high and crazy. And I've did a podcast on why not to have a long list of requirements in a partner. And I read this book, I forget, it was by, I think, Ezra Klein, this book on how polarized we've become politically. And it said that like nowadays, and I've seen this in my practice, people will not even go on a date with somebody who has a different political orientation. And that's like so crazy, because like you may be more aligned with that person than you think. They may be fairly centrist, but they just picked up, so they just said, that they're on one side or the other because they have certain things that they disagree with or agree with. And you're stopping yourself from seeing somebody that you may chemically and emotionally and intellectually click with. And there is, of course, also now this is like not even a thing, but like it used to be that partners could talk to one another about political issues and perhaps, emerge with a moderate viewpoint that they come up with between them that characterizes more of who they are as a couple and kind of learn from one another's perspectives and grow. That is no longer thought to be valid at all. In fact, like among many women, if you see that a guy's a Republican on a dating app, he's just like out the window. That could have been the love of your life. You don't know. It could have been that he's a Republican because he doesn't believe in certain financial things that you actually kind of don't care about as much as you think, as all the socially liberal things that you care about. Like, you don't really know. So, I mean, if you are out there dating and somebody seems really like you click with them, except they clicked off the wrong political button on the dating app, and I know that OkCupid had political stuff, so maybe other ones do too. Maybe still go out with that person for a first date because you don't really want to conclude everything about a human based on their political leanings, which, by the way, change over time. They do change. People are always evolving and always in flux. So different sorts of experiences, aging, parenting, different, having more money. There's lots of things that accord with change, or less money. There's lots of different things that accord with changing your political beliefs even slightly. But anyway, that's just relevant for people who are very close-minded about even considering somebody who's politically different, even by checking off a box. And that's more people than you think. So anyhow, the point of this is, if your wife came off very politically liberal and you feel like that was a bait and switch because she's sexually closed-minded, man, you had sex with her. Like, you could have seen it. You were young. Everybody that's young is stupid. I was stupid. Everybody. So I mean, and that's not like a pejorative. That's just literally, you don't really know anything yet. But it doesn't mean, like, it shouldn't be confusing to you. How is somebody that's so politically liberal so sexually closed off? Because those are completely different constructs, and it was your wishful thinking and inexperience that conflated them. It does not mean that she in some way was promising something that she didn't give. You were in bed with her. You saw all the hard stops. So, I mean, it's on you more than it's on her, honestly, because there's no woman that thinks that saying that they are politically liberal means that they are going to be doing some wild shit in bed. That just isn't a thing. Like, women don't think like that. Men subconsciously think like that. Men are always looking for signs that a woman is sexually open-minded. Always looking for signs like that, because they are like primed to see sex everywhere. And I mean, it's just like women say to me, well, he never ended up being very responsible. He's never been able to keep a job. He's never been very good with money. But when we met, he told me that it was important for him to, own his own home. Yeah, okay, he said that, but where was he living when he said that? He was like living with a roommate. Like, the only way he's owned his own home now is because you've always had a job. Like, look at the person's behavior, not what they say is their philosophy. And everybody young, they don't know this yet. And so if you're listening to this and you're young, look at people's behavior. Look at what they do. Look at their actions over their words. All right. Well, hopefully this was interesting and was applicable to enough of you to be of use. And I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.